know what time it is.
You know what time it is.
That's right. It's the Grunge Bible Podcast. Time for episode 155. Am I right?
155, enter.
You know what time it is. That's my mood. That's been my mood this past week. At least the past week. Probably past month. But moving forward, that is going to be my steadfast mood.
Let me tell you something. I take one look at you right now, Ethan, with the goose hat on and the headphones on. And all I know, I take one look at you and I know that's a man who knows what time it is.
That's right. And
that
I know
man
Chris
has checked his watch.
I know you know what time it is. It's Friday afternoon, and I believe you have a beverage.
I do have a beverage, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going
You
out
know
a
what
little
time it
later,
is.
so figured might as well get started here with a little beverage on the podcast.
A little bevy.
So, yeah, happy Friday, happy Monday if you're listening and it's Monday or whatever day you're listening on. But it's time to check in here for episode 155 of the Grunge Bible Podcast. Ethan, how we doing? Besides being aware of the time.
Oh, yeah. I'm doing well. Yes, very, very good week. Got a lot of things done. Felt productive. Felt like
Great.
good. The only thing I didn't get to do that I really want to do, which I'm going to accomplish tonight, is watch the Dune movie. I actually didn't watch the first one. I don't know if you probably have you?
No, some of my friends were going to Dune 2 last week and they were like, do you want to come? I was like, I don't have time to watch the first one. And
The first one's 2.5
well, actually,
hours,
we
yeah.
were recording
Somehow I
a
missed it.
podcast actually, and
Mm.
it's okay. I didn't want to go to the movie.
Yeah, still going to the second one without seeing the first would be pretty
Tough.
psycho move, you know?
Yeah, I
It's
agree.
like watching The Last Lord of the Rings first. So I really feel like I missed out, and I've been watching movies recently. Like I feel really connected to film. So I'm like,
Sure.
I've heard really good things about this. I don't know how I missed it the first time around, but
When did it come out? The original, the first Dune.
21.
Oh, okay. So there not much time has elapsed.
And probably nothing in theaters of when it, because theaters were shut down probably still.
Right.
So I don't think that it was.
Oh, okay.
So I missed it.
Mhm.
So not that much time has passed, but it's got a whole series, a whole book series. So there's going to be more. And
I got you.
Yeah,
They're just getting started.
they're just getting started. Exactly.
Awesome.
How are you today, Chris?
I'm good. The week is done. I finished work a little bit earlier before the pod. I got my lift in already, and it's Friday afternoon, and I'm good, man. I have nothing to complain about. The weather's warming up here a little bit. I'm just a pretty solid mood.
Hell yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, man. I'm excited.
Hopefully March just flies by.
March is going to be busy.
March is busy. April, May, June. I mean, the rest is going to be really busy.
Yeah.
But
The nice
reason I
thing
say
too,
that is
we're going to be front loading the podcast, so we're gonna have a couple of weeks where we don't have to record a podcast. So
we haven't done that
that'll
in a
be nice.
while.
I know we deserve it.
It goes in waves because that sometimes like we talk about it, like it's kind of nice to do it the day before and it comes out and you're like, it's very current. It's a very
Right.
current check-in. But then after a while, it's kind of nice to bank a few where you can kind of set it aside and not worry about it.
Yeah. So this is March 8th that we're recording this on. This one will come out on the 11th, and then probably tomorrow we're going to do the episode for the 18th, and then maybe the day after that we'll get the episode for the 25th done. So it'll be nice to
Wow.
take a step back from the microphone here for a little bit. So but in the meantime, we've got some good stuff to chat about, yap it up here a little bit.
Oh yeah. Yapping World Championships coming at you.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
us.
We're in mid-season form.
So it comes out on March 11th, which
3/11.
is 3/11 day. I think we got to start off the podcast and say Happy 3/11 day. What do
Shout
you
it from
think
the
about-
mountaintops.
Yeah, shout it from the mountaintops. What do you think about 3/11, Chris? Have you ever listened to much of them?
Yeah, the
What'd you
only
say?
reason I've listened to 3/11 is because March 11th has come upon us in the past, and
Last 28 years.
people I hate how that happens. People will bombard the page with like, "Where's the 3/11? Like, why aren't we celebrating the holiday?" And before Grunge Bible, I didn't know the 3/11 existed. Sitting here with you right now, I couldn't from memory name a single 3/11 song. I don't really care for them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have, their biggest song is Amber. Amber's
Amber,
the
that's
color.
yeah, yep.
Yeah. And I historically hate that song. I really do.
I remember this because I posted them once, and you were like, I posted them once, and you were like, you picked the worst song of theirs.
Yeah.
Post.
I don't know if everybody feels that way. I hope so. It's just kind of like, it's just annoying.
Though, so
yeah. Like their song "Beautiful Disaster," that's like one of their other big ones. I think I like really
"Nautical
good.
Disaster" by Tragically Hip, but not "Beautiful Disaster."
I'm gonna listen to them back to back, and then you got the "All Mixed Up" is another one that you probably know. And those are the biggest three, but like they're other than that, like you said, for some reason Amber really grinds my gears. I don't like it. It's not the reggae that the rest that they have, that the rest of the band.
Would I be wrong to think of 311 as kind of being sublimey almost, or is that?
No, that's okay. Correct.
Got it. It's been a long time since I've listened to them. Well, it's been 64 days. Well, 65 because there's a leap day year in between. So crazy.
Yeah, no, it's good. I'm excited for the weather to break and for that music to kind of come back. I've been listening to some more Dirty Heads. They're just I really want to see them again. They're kind of coming back into my life.
Totally. That's
Sublime.
Awesome. I love the springtime. I love the springtime because you really begin for the first time in a calendar year starting to push the envelope with what musical selections you make as the soundtrack to your day. Like we'll get like a 50-degree day and it's like, all right, like it might as well be 80 in July right now. And like, we're going to crank all the summer hits, roll those windows down. So it's nothing hits. Like I'll tell you the first nice warm day of the springtime thawing out of winter, that hits really well.
It is really interesting how like the temperature and music combination is so
they're intertwined,
intertwined, and so like it's just like it's like a soul thing. Like I can put on some lively music, but if it's cold out, it doesn't hit. But then all of a sudden it's get a little warmer, and all of a sudden the music hits so much better, and it's like it's a very interpersonal soul type of thing. I don't know how to explain
like
it.
Weather, disposition, and soul.
Yeah,
music.
Right, and then smell. I've been thinking about smell a lot lately. This is random.
Absolutely.
This is very random. I've been thinking about smell like so much. Like when people says like I can picture, like I can in my mind imagine the smell of that first apartment or those certain times and stuff. And it is so, or when you smell something, it takes you right back.
Yeah.
The fact that, because music does is obviously you hear something and it takes you right back, or if you see something. But in my mind, thinking about how smells can take you back to even almost more vividly, I think it actually is the biggest form of nostalgia that you can have. Not even like pictures, or like the smells are so, again, it's like in your soul. I don't know, man.
There's a reason why back in the day when all of the men were off at war, their significant others would spray their perfume on the letter and send it. You know?
There's
a reason for that.
Yes, that is a great point too.
I'm right there with you.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's just crazy how like sweat, the smell of like salt, like sweat from like a hot day, it will take you to certain times in the summer that you go to, and then like kind of coincides with music and stuff, or like a brisk day.
Yeah.
I mean, those are just like general stuff, and then we get to like really intense smells. But
yeah. And with that, we welcome you into the first episode of the Smell Bible podcast.
That's right. Man, I wish Drew was on for that. He would have loved that segment.
Yeah,
he would have been all over talking about smells.
We're hoping to have him on next week for the big 156, the 3-year anniversary of the podcast, which is going to be an interesting episode. I haven't put myself in the headspace yet, so I'm saving
it will be good. Yeah, it's going to be really fun. And yeah, he better be on it. He's a part of this, so he better.
Yeah, and we have the opportunity to to celebrate the 3-year anniversary next week because of the support that we have received every step along the way. By now, we've got a Patreon page. We've got merchandise. We've got, a podcast that you can share with other people, that you can share on your socials. We've got a lot of different avenues that you can choose to support us through. And a lot of people have, particularly the Patreon. That's been the main driver of making this thing go the last 2 years and 51 weeks. And I'm happy to say that sitting here today, right before we started to record, we got a new member of the Patreon club. So we can ring that nice, fine, dandy bell once again. So joining in at the $5 level, we've got My Real Name is Greg, and I immediately am unsure whether or not your real name is Greg, considering you had to qualify it and you're already defending yourself. But real name Greg, Cheers to you. Thank you for supporting us. We hope you like the show, and we hope to be around making the show for many, many weeks to come. Thanks to you and those like you. And those like you include our top tier supporters who give us $10 every month supporting the podcast. It's about that time of year, Ethan, where the tax man comes and collects on all of our hosting services, our subscriptions, software, hardware, malware, all sorts of wares you got to pay for every year. Silverware, silver chair, silver man, super gun, silver
sun
Superman,
pickups,
Shell Silverstein, Chevy Silverado,
Chevy Chase, Chevrolet.
We need to be kicked off of the air immediately. Nevertheless, the sterling silver supporters that we have at our top tier, $10 a month to us for the podcast, I would like to thank Russell, What the Fuck Is Up Denny's, Sherry Matthews, Seattle 4 Fanboy from New Jersey, Pile of Punk, Nikki Six, Millie, Lauren Irene, Keith White, King Buzzo Stole My Hair, Chris LSMS, Carlene Salona, Jamie Lynn, Jade Mercado, Gochu John, Fuck Soup, Faith Bittner, Eric R. Berry, Epona, D-Boat, Doug Endy, Down in a Hole, Flat Out Fucked, Eddie Vedder Got Me Through My Second Divorce, Corden Stewart, Kara K, The Blue Owl, and Black Hole Sean. Thank you one and all for your support. A lot of those people have been here since damn near the beginning, which is a very impressive feat. And, you know, the commitment I think that we've had to the show is mirrored, you know, on a one-to-one level of the commitment people have had to support when it comes to supporting us. And that means a lot.
It does. It's always encouraging to read off the names that have been there for so long. And we're thankful to have them and to be able to continue to do this. And we hope that more people follow their footsteps.
Absolutely. So we're going to get into, we're past the intro here, and we're going to get into this day in music history for March 11th, the day that this episode is released. But we are recording this on March 8th. And two special things happened on March 8th, 1994. One more special to me than the other. But on this day in 1994, Nine Inch Nails' album, The Downward Spiral, was released. And also on this day in 1994, Soundgarden's Super Unknown was released. So I've been hammering
Super
Unknown content.
Is what you've been listening.
Yeah, I've been really excited for some Nine Inch Nails. And yeah, that's basically, I just needed to talk about them today and Trent Reznor. And
I was going to say, do you know who Trent Reznor is? What do you know about Trent? Yeah. Have they ever been posted on the page?
Yeah, I've posted them a couple of times.
Okay.
But it's been a while.
They're just kind of a shadow band. They just never seem to.
They can't break through.
They can't break through for me. I've listened to them at times in high school, but they never quite made it through. So, but yeah. Awesome.
There you have it.
Two good albums. Maybe I'll listen to them both.
Yeah, I front to back Super Unknown earlier today. I did not front to back the Nine Inch Nails album.
We almost did an episode centered around that, but we did that 2 years ago.
Yeah, 2 years ago. I think on the anniversary we did it.
It's just crazy. It's been 2 years. I really felt like it was last year that we talked about being in the Super Unknown.
That was episode number 51, which was released on March 11th, 2022. So I think that was back when we were still releasing on Fridays. So,
double 311 day.
Things were different then.
So we have some good this day in music. Actually, there's some pretty cool ones. Finally, right? It's been a while.
It's about time.
I think it's been a while since we had some like significant ones. At least two.
We skipped it a couple of weeks ago. Yeah.
Yeah, we had to.
We had to.
There's nothing there for us to do. You know.
Right.
All right. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first. So this day in music, March 11th. So we've got one birthday that we wanted to mention. On March 11th, 1964, Pantera drummer Vinnie Paul was born. Pantera is a complete and utter blind spot for me musically. I know there's a lot of people in the strength and conditioning circle who swear by Pantera in the weight room. A lot of your power lifters, equipped power lifters, I think, got a lot going for Pantera. But Ethan, are you knowledgeable at all? Do you like Pantera? Do you have an opinion on them?
That was one of those bands that in high school, I remember there was we were talking to some people that played music, and one of the guys loved the guitar from I'm blanking on the guitarist's name, but Pantera, their guitarist, blanking. And so I listened to them a little bit, but no, that's kind of like as far as I went. But I always knew that they had some really crazy musicals, like pretty heavy rock stuff, and weight room material.
Totally. Pantera is one of those bands that for my whole life, all around me, for most of my musical listening life, there have been people that I know and that I'm friends with and whose musical tastes I value that love Pantera, but it's just never a bridge that I've crossed.
Yeah. There's so much music. We talk about, I feel like we talk about a band once a week where it's just like, it's a blind spot.
We've got a lot of blind spots.
Yeah, sadly. But the just looking up the albums by Pantera, we have Vulgar Display of Power, Cowboys from Hell, Far Beyond Driven, and The Great Southern Trend Kill. So,
interesting.
Sounds pretty dark.
That does sound pretty dark.
Moving on
to
some events. So happy birthday to Vinnie Paul. 1975, Alice Cooper releases Welcome to My Nightmare. This one is a blind spot for me, Chris.
I was going to say, too. So I put this on the list because I had a feeling maybe there was a chance that you were an Alice Cooper guy, or maybe you grew up, maybe your dad was an Alice Cooper guy and passed them on to you.
Well, knowing, I mean, you know me and how I am, but like the classic rock scene, I feel like I listened to so much in so many different ways and stuff, but it was never, I feel like it took me a while to really nail down who was who and all of it. Like it's kind of, it all blurred together and stuff. So like,
especially when you're young.
And we never did we never had a bunch of records or CDs in the car. It was always radio. So we always popped around. So like getting albums straight from back then and what songs were on what album is very difficult for me. So Alice Cooper, like I just know a little bit.
Yeah, I remember.
I know he rips.
I'm not sure if it's still active, but for most of my like teenage years, when I was living in Rhode Island before I went to college, the local rock radio station had I think it was on weekend nights or just maybe nights in general. They had a syndicated radio show that Alice Cooper did called Nights with Alice Cooper, and I remember he would DJ and host it and sometimes have guests. But that's as far as my knowledge on Alice Cooper goes.
We almost played "School's Out" for.
You're right. Yeah, that is. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, School's Out and No More Mr. Nice Guy. But School's Out, we almost played that because our band played, me and Drew and the rest of the guys played for graduation, and we played our class song, but we really wanted to go into School's Out afterwards. But there was a few people in the band that didn't have the balls to potentially get in trouble.
Naturally, the long arm of the law neuters a lot of people along the way.
We should have, thinking about that, we should have just went right into it. Oh,
I remember hearing you told me the story once before. Yeah,
did I?
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
I fucked up. This one's actually, this isn't chronological order. We've got to go back a couple of years. This is my bad.
Oh, good point.
Anyways, in 1972, on March 11th, Neil Young's album Harvest reaches #1 on the charts in the U.S. And Harvest is just a completely flawless album, in my opinion. You've got tracks like Out on the Weekend, Man Needs a Maid, Heart of Gold, Old Man, Needle and the Damage Done. I'm a big Neil Young fan. I'm a big Harvest fan. I love his whole discography. I mean, between the stuff that he did with his collaborations with Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, Buffalo Springfield, Crazy Horse, Promise of the Real, even now, fantastic. He's touring this year. I gotta see Neil Young. Gotta see him. Yeah. Gotta see him.
You really should. That sounds very appropriate. Have to do it.
And I very much feel like this is the last chance.
His stuff's not even on Spotify still.
Right. Yeah, not anymore. It's been a couple of years.
That's crazy. Yeah, you definitely, that should be a goal. Big goal to see Neil Young. That sounds awesome, actually. That's historic. That would be so historic. Not many people that I feel like there's not many people that I would feel this way about.
Yeah, Neil's for sure one of them.
Yeah,
I really respect and admire him a lot, and his music ability and a lot of his writing. I've read his book and a lot of his work. Really, really interesting dude.
Right. All right. So moving up to 1991, we all know this one. Pearl Jam begins recording. I don't know, some album named 10. I don't know.
Oh man, interesting.
Mookie Blaylock.
Mookie Blaylock, wasn't he a basketball player? Interesting to know.
1991.
This was the
33 years.
This was the day that they began recording it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they started recording in March. The album came out in August of 91.
Yeah.
So, all
Quite
through
a long time.
Summer of 91, baby. It's fantastic. We'll move up to 1997. On this day in 97, Paul McCartney was knighted by Queen Elizabeth II. And Ethan, I got to tell you, I'm kind of jealous that in the States, we don't have some sort of operation or pipeline that can knight people, because I just think that would be sick, somehow getting knighted by a governing body. Like, that sounds pretty awesome.
That's like a better version of the like Hall of Fames that we have. In
baseball. And I mean, like, say what you will about like Great Britain and like certainly like the imperialist mark that they made. I mean, there's a lot that you could say, but I mean, like one thing they got right, maybe the only thing, was knighting people. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I totally agree. That is really badass.
Sir Paul McCartney.
Do I have to be from there to be able to be knighted, or can I go?
Well, they give out honorary. Something? They give out honorary everything these days. So maybe you could be like honorary knighted.
Yeah,
perhaps.
I do want to earn it though. I don't just want to be. No, I don't want to have a handout knighted.
Absolutely,
knighting.
That was a test, Ethan. Yeah, you passed.
Change my name, cut my hair.
Exactly.
All right, moving on. Oh, this is a good one.
It's a really good one.
I like this one. Yeah, this is a good pick by you. 2006. This is a great song. I really enjoyed. James Blunt's song "You're Beautiful" reaches #1 in the USA. Before I move on and read the rest of it, that song was massive. That was a lot of fun to listen to.
It was everywhere for several years.
It was like the first time that I ever, like when he says, I was fucking high. Like that was the first time I ever heard like the F word. I feel like
me too. Because on the radio they changed it to "I was flying high," and then somehow online, like maybe the LimeWire era or something, I heard "I was fucking high," and I was like, "Oh my goodness, James Blunt is going to hell." He said a curse word.
Yep. And so Blunt later said that the song is about a guy who's high as a fucking kite on drugs in a subway, stalking someone else's girlfriend. That's so sinister. Yes, it is so. That's crazy to think that he would admit to that in a way. Yeah. I
love it when I hear about songs that have like completely ridiculous meanings like that. Like recently, Super Unknown's been on the mind, and their song "Mailman," Chris Cornell has said it's about wanting to kill your boss, like walking into work and just shooting your boss dead. And like this one, it's like you think it's this really tender love song about somebody who you just connect with just by the look, that you give each other. And it's like, nope, I'm high as a kite and I'm stalking somebody on the subway. Which, let's be honest, we've all been there, right? I mean, so it's a very relatable
every move
song.
You make.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll be watching you.
Crash Into Me, Dave Matthews. It's about a peeping Tom.
Yeah.
Fucked up. I mean, this is the stuff they don't tell you when they play it on the radio. Probably a good thing they don't tell you.
Right. They probably do on some radio shows.
Yeah. Maybe Nights with Alice Cooper. He's like, this James Blunt guy is fucked up.
Oh, man.
Wow.
Pretty, it's really interesting that people would let James decide to write that song.
Yeah. Yeah.
About that. Like,
and
or
it's
like,
so funny too.
But like you said, Chris Cornell, like, I'm going to write a song about like blowing your boss's brains off.
Right. It's just like what happens, like what weird alchemy occurs that is the one that becomes popular, and that is forever going to be the most significant or famous thing that James Blunt ever did.
Cherry pie guy.
the cautionary tale of Janie Lane, exactly. There's far too much lore. There is far too much lore behind what you and I just spoke about that I think we just need to leave everybody in the dark on it.
We'll come back to it. We'll do an episode on that.
We will need to do an episode on that because that is important. Remember the cautionary tale.
So this episode comes out on the 11th, but if we go back 10 days in time and 30 years, we have a very historic performance that took place in the Terminal, is it Elms?
Terminal 1.
Terminal Elms? Eins in Munich, Germany. Anybody know what it is?
I know.
All right, Chris, go ahead.
That would be Nirvana's final show, Professor.
You're correct. That's awesome.
Yes.
And it was in a, as you wrote, a fucking airplane hangar. How random. How awesome.
It's absolutely ridiculous. Before we start talking about their final show, I'm always kind of reminded every time something comes up, like how paramount and how pivotal 1994 was for music, and how many things happened. I think 1994 and 1991 together, maybe two of the most pivotal years, certainly as it relates to this genre, but even just like modern music. And this one is totally worth talking about, it being Nirvana's final show. Of course, nobody knew it at the time, on March 1st, and they had they played this show and they had to cancel their tour. And obviously, just over a month later, Kurt Cobain died. So, their final show, Munich, Germany, at Terminal 1, which was an airplane hangar. This just seems to have disaster written all over it, just based off of the venue.
Yeah, it definitely does, and it kind of we watched a good bit of it. There's some video on YouTube and stuff, and it kind of was a disaster in a lot of ways, sadly. But the fans had a great time. So
they seemed to.
It seemingly had a really good time, and that could just be the crowd and the state they were in and what they were kind of expecting. But we talked about, like, Kurt, he's not in the best shape at this point. Obviously, there's a lot of things building and yeah, exactly, and transpiring. So it was kind of a tough show to watch, which we've seen with other bands where there's breadcrumbs, with
absolutely.
Same thing with Lane. When Lane was playing the last shows and stuff, and like you can just tell, sadly.
Yeah. And in this one, this was pretty much, nobody knew it at the time, but it was the end of the European tour that they did in support of In Utero, and this was the shortest show that they had done for the entire tour, and obviously it was abruptly canceled after this show. And you can just tell, like, there's two things going on for me that I notice. And number one, more than two, but number one, the musicians are professionals, right? Like they show up to play a show, that they're going to work. They have a job to do. And you can tell by this point, I think I even have the tendency, when I think of Nirvana, to just kind of romanticize like them as this like completely like balls to the wall, caution to the wind, sloppy, unplanned band that was just chaos every single night. But I mean, certainly by 1994, being the biggest band in the world in a lot of ways, and selling the most records that more than any other band was basically doing at the time. They toured incessantly, right? I mean, by this point, like, they're professionals clocking in to do a job. And, a lot of times that touring schedule, and even still today with a lot of bands, like, it can be pretty relentless, and it can be really tough on the musicians. And I think that comes to light very clearly throughout this show. I think particularly with Kurt, obviously, and Kurt struggling with his chronic lifelong stomach pain. He had bronchitis going into this. He was struggling with drug addiction. There were creative tensions with what Kurt was thinking the future of the band wasn't or was. He had been on record many times saying that they didn't have any more music and they had no idea what they were going to do after In Utero. And you can feel the tension, I think, when you listen to this and when you watch this. And it's interesting because that's kind of at odds with, the 3,000 people that were here at this airplane hangar waiting to see this band that they had anticipated for months and months to see, that they had just put out In Utero the year prior, and it was this big thing. And it's just kind of that dichotomy there between, like, this band is like really fighting to get through it here, and you have 3,000 people that are hoping for the best night of their lives, the best show of their lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when I was watching it a little bit, like, yeah, they, Nirvana performed with obviously intensity and like you said, unplanned, aggression and excitement, and you could tell once they started, like, it was very disconnected. Like, Kurt was playing, and it seemed like Dave was playing his own thing, like Chris was playing his own thing, and Kurt was playing. They were all playing very separately, and it was like it just was broken up.
Mm-hmm.
And like Dave was hammering away on the drums back there, doing his best.
Right.
And like Kurt was just, it didn't sound, it was like slow and fast and kind of broken up. And it was like he was on an island, doing what he had to do to get through. And, it just was, I think when you perform a show for a couple years that is run on intensity and like, or punk rock type of, like, that's tough to keep up. And if you're not bringing it one night, or if something's off, like you say bronchitis, and you're feeling sick and stuff, and that makes that's really hard to kind of like nail that.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a little disconnected.
Yeah,
sadly.
I thought about, when I was watching it, I thought about the Kurt Cobain quote that the worst crime is faking it, which I think was from his death letter. And it's one of those things, and we've talked about that before. Like, how do you like, either you are still inspired to play the song that you've played hundreds of times, or you just get really good at acting, right? And it seems like this was one of those things where maybe they weren't necessarily inspired by it, and they weren't necessarily doing a great job of acting it. But it's one of those things, like, I feel like unless you're in their shoes, like, it's got to be a very difficult thing to do. I mean, they've got the weight of the world on them at this point, and the expectations are so high. Being Nirvana, being like that band that created that movement, and like Kurt Cobain, it's like, you are that guy, and like, without you, nothing else around you would really exist in the way that it does. And I mean, I don't know how anybody can really hold up against that type of pressure, let alone when they're struggling with their health, or struggling with addiction issues, personal issues. Like, it's a really hard thing. Like, people always talk about like, oh, like, leave work at work, and like leave home at home when you're at work. Like, that's impossible to do.
It's not possible.
Yeah. Especially too, like, the sound at this airplane hangar, terrible. The power went out at least once. It was just a complete and utter mess. And like, for like what you're saying, like, that's like, that just adds to the war chest of things that are going wrong that might make you, kind of be disjointed with your performances.
Yeah. And they canceled the rest of the tour after the show.
Yeah.
They knew that they probably weren't happy with that performance.
Yeah, and certainly I think they weren't happy with the condition of everybody in the band.
Yeah. The first song, it was a pretty, they played 23 songs.
23 songs,
pretty
yeah.
Long, it's a pretty long set. And I like that they opened up with My Best Friend's Girl, Cars cover. And yeah, that was great. It was a little like, they were playing it, and it seemed, I don't know. It's it's kind of fun to hear like Nirvana play a cover like this. It's like really upbeat.
Yeah.
I think it was just suboptimal of what they probably have rehearsed it or something. It seemed like it could have a little bit more, but it was still pretty fun.
Yeah, I liked it. Like Nirvana and I think Kurt, and I mean all of them, all three of the the core members of Nirvana, like they had.
Yeah, Pat was there.
Pat Smear was in Nirvana, motherfuckers.
He was
but they
there.
all had this ability. I think you see it a lot in their interviews and just like their stage presence to just be like so whimsical at times and so satirical. And I love that, even on like maybe one of their worst nights of touring, they still had that with them with this cover. And I think, just the way that they presented it, it's not like them like fucking off on Top of the Pops in 1992, or just like mailing in the concert in Rio in 93, but like, it's still kind of like ever true to form.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And, I mean, the song, the track list is great. They play all the songs that I'd want to hear if I went to a show. So, I'm sure that if I was there, they finished with Heart Shaped Box. They played, they played Serve the Servants, which I really had, which was pretty solid. I like listening to that one, of course. Lounge Act, Rape Me, Territorial Pissings. They got them all.
Yeah, they really do.
You could literally read off all the, it's all the good ones.
Like the ending, like just from a track list point of view, like All Apologies on a Plane, Blue, and Heart Shaped Box. I thought Blue was really good.
And but The Man Who Sold the World, Bowie cover.
The Bowie cover, obviously. Yeah. I want to talk about Come As You Are, The Power Goes Out, and it's out for a few minutes, right? And it's just kind of one of those things that, I mean, this is pretty early on in the set. This is the 6th song that they played. And it's like, I think I have to imagine if you're a seasoned touring musician, like you've got to just have this feeling like, okay, like it's going to be one of those nights. And this certainly seemed like it was going to be one of those nights where, first of all, it's like you start showing up, like the sound sucks. Like you might not be able to hear each other as well. Like, I mean, the crowd was energetic, but just like seemingly at points, like unconcerned with the music that was being played on the stage. You know, they're kind of like clapping, chanting, like not being very like in tune with the show, especially during the power outage, which I guess, you know, is to be expected. I mean, that just throws a big old wrench in it. They had to stop Come As You Are, and they started it up again and got back on track a little bit. Something I do want to talk about too, the 11th song was Lithium, and after Lithium, before they went to Pennyroyal Tea, Chris Novoselic takes the mic and basically gives this little mini speech, which turns out to be pretty harrowing in retrospect. And he goes on and he says that, you know, we're on our way out. Grunge is dead. You know, our next our next record's going to be a hip hop record, but like we're on our way out. Like it's over. And like, how fucking weird is that like of all shows to say that it's, you know, it's what turns out to be the final show.
It is really, scary to think about in a way. Yeah. I wonder if they probably knew. They just knew. I mean, we talked about there's another band that is going through a breakup, and bands break up, especially when it's not, you know, it's not a one person band refilling the rest. You know, when every piece is kind of, I mean, I guess they've had multiple drummers in Nirvana and stuff, and it really was, they needed Kurt, but
right.
But yeah, bands break up and bands know there's tension and stuff, and probably the writing was on the wall for them internally too. Like, it was very clear what was going on, and they probably wouldn't make it on more albums. And people talk about, like, if they would have kept going, like Kurt would have been solo. They think that he would have went and wrote more, and Dave would have went on and still did the Foo, like, even if he didn't probably pass away.
Yeah, a lot of people in the inner circle of the band, you know, in the band sphere at the time, are pretty certain that the band was not long for the musical world at that point, and that a breakup was imminent. And I have to say, Ethan, like, more than any other of the big bands from the early 90s that we talk about a lot on this show, like, I feel like I have missed out on a lot, and there's a lot about Nirvana in particular that I don't know and I'm not aware of in the way that I would like to be, simply because I wasn't around at the time. Like, I feel like I miss out on a lot of the nuance of like how Nirvana made people feel, and the tension that existed in the band, and the struggles that the people in the band had. And I think this event, you know, is tantamount to that, where it's like, you know, I feel like, you know, certainly if you were there at the time following it, I mean, you turn on MTV and it would have been top of the line news that, you know, Nirvana's, you know, they played this show and then they had to cancel their tour, and now Kurt's going to Rome, and like, then he's in the hospital, and boom, you know, you kind of forget about all of that. And, you know, then he comes back to the US and, you know, is going into rehabilitation. Like, there's just such a disconnect for me, more than any other band. I think, like, I can read about these things, I learn about them, but I really, because so much of Nirvana was what they made you feel like, and I don't have
exactly what you're talking about. I know exactly what you're talking about. And I always think about when we talk to Eric Lederman, or when we talk to Andy Engelman, a couple of my, you know, the people that were there that are music people, and the way they talk about, how the scene that, you know, because those people were playing music as well and being influenced, not just like as fans, but influenced as musicians, and like what it did to, like, when you heard Jerry play, like, he's like, that changed the way everybody wanted to play guitar. Right. You know what I mean? Like, and I liken it to a lot of the feelings that I had like 10 years ago listening to the bands, like right out of high school, and how that kind of changed like my, you know, life. Yeah. And I just think, you know, 10x that, because it's Nirvana and larger. I mean, we can talk about with there's plenty of artists in the last few years that in 15 years, it's going to be hard for people to kind of understand what it was like. And it is. It's very true that you say that. Like, Nirvana is one of those bands that, like, we're never going to really comprehend exactly what it was like. It's just how it's going to be.
It's just one of those things that I feel like I could read, you know, for the rest of the year, read up about Nirvana. And I just feel like I'll never fully understand it, maybe in the way that I feel more confident about, you know, my feelings on other bands. But I mean, you talk about, at the beginning of the episode, like, you went on the tangent about like senses and stuff. And like, we're missing that with this band, right? Like, we don't remember like what the room sounded like, and like what, you know, what everything smelled like, you know, when you were watching you're watching the news. And I'll tell you, like, a lot of times like we'll post on the page and we'll talk about, oh, like where were you when this happened, or do you remember this happening? And it, without fail, anytime we talk about Nirvana, like when In Utero came out, or when Teen Spirit came out, when Kurt died, it is, we get the most vivid recollections of people, and they're like, I literally remember it like it was yesterday. It was 30 years ago. And certainly for the 3,000 people that were at this show, their last show, I'm sure they all remember it like it was yesterday. And for everybody watching back home at MTV, when they found out that they canceled the tour and, you know, Kurt was really in a bad way, you know, throughout this tour, I feel like they probably remember that instantly. They remember listening to Kurt Loder talk about it on MTV.
Mm-hmm. Especially because the media outlets were very, a lot more concise. You know, there wasn't 50,000 ways to consume it. So it was like TV, news, whatever.
There's only a few options. And Nirvana, I mean, they were covered in a way, like they were covered like a professional sports team is covered right now. I mean, you got beat writers, like you got people. Yeah, like the fucking Beatles, man. like Sir Paul McCartney, knighted in 97. And it's like one of those things, like it's one of those, like they're such a cultural phenomenon, and I know it, but because I've not felt it, it's always challenging for me to talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, I recently I was thought about, it's like COVID, right?
Yeah.
Like right now, COVID they said, you know, treat it like the flu. That's pretty much what they say right now. So in like 10 years or 15 years, kids will be like talking about it, like, yeah, like, I mean, we look legit shut down. We couldn't leave our house. Mm-hmm. It's such a weird thing where how much it's changed since then, and that'll be hard to explain to people, like, what do you mean you guys, like, it was like a year and a half, it's like, yeah, everything like shut down, and it's so random.
I remember the way my apartment smelled, like sitting in there, like I remember the way the light would reflect off of the blinds vividly. It's just one of those.
I just remember it was like, I mean, I guess I was 4 years ago, so 25. Yeah. And like, I almost felt like I was my freshman year of college again, because there was no responsibilities of like day to day, like everything. You were just in your house. There's no responsibilities anymore.
Yeah, it was certainly the most.
It was just try not to die.
It was certainly the most peculiar like experiences it's the closest thing to an apocalypse so far. Yeah, it was so fucking weird. I'll never forget.
There was a time when you kind of thought maybe like this is gonna wipe out.
Yeah, like this is gonna be it, because at the beginning, like nobody knew how potent it was. Nobody knew, like, is it like, hey, do you get it and you die, or like what is it? And I remember
I can't be in the same room as them.
Yeah, like I took a flight in April of 2020, and I was flying out of Houston International Airport, which is like one of the biggest airports in the country, right? And when I tell you there was nobody there, there was no one there. And it was interesting.
How did you even fly? How were you allowed to fly?
I don't, but this was before a lot of the procedure and like best practices were in place. Like this was still in the time period of the pandemic where they weren't like they weren't even telling like normal civilians to wear masks, for example, because they're like, we need them for the healthcare workers. Like I remember, like I went to the Houston International Airport, like I didn't wear a mask. Like it was so weird. I remember I sat on this plane, which probably could fit 250 people, and there were like 7 of us on the plane. Yeah. And it was and
half of them were wearing gas masks, the hazmat, like people were wearing those masks.
It was so weird. It's like it's an experience like that unless you were there, man. Like I understand it when people talk and they're like, oh, what do you guys know? You weren't there. It's like, I know. I'm sorry about that. I'm sad. I wasn't.
It's like when Scott said the joke, how many army men did it take to change a light bulb in Vietnam?
Yeah, exactly.
So you had to be there. Army men. Fuck.
Yeah, man. Seriously. And like, I don't know what any of those tangents necessarily have to do with Nirvana's last show, but they have everything to do with it.
So you had to be there. You had to be there on those shows.
You had to be there. It's funny, Ethan, like out of all the podcasts we do, like unequivocally, I always feel like we do, like I personally do the worst job on the Nirvana ones because I can't shake this feeling talking about it. You know, it's like we watch the show. And like I feel the way that I feel about it, but I know I have the advantage of hindsight, right?
Mm-hmm. And it's funny though, because they are, like we talked about, like Nirvana's pretty heavily followed and like documented.
So well documented, yeah.
Right. But it does seem like it's just out of reach for us.
It's like you can easily return to the past, but no one is there.
Yes. Any last thoughts on the live performance and the anniversary or Nirvana? I think we'll come back and do another one soon, I think.
Yeah. I want to talk about like Kurt himself and a lot of like his words throughout the years, because I find him to be supremely fascinating. And something that I do know, even though I wasn't there, is he was just massively misunderstood by a lot of members of traditional media, talking about him, I was the voice of anger of a generation. Like, he was so gentle and so nuanced. And I would love to talk about that. But as it relates to the show, like, we're talking about it, and obviously it was not a good show for them. But even in the face of all of that, even in the face of touring relentlessly and just being completely burnt out and struggling, like, there were moments throughout this show where they not only sounded good, but they had energy and they were super tight. And it just speaks to the professionalism and the talent and the synergy that the band had, where even on one of their worst nights and when they're really struggling and, Kurt's like falling apart on the inside, they're still able to put together a performance that, was really solid. And I think maybe at points emblematic of what they wanted and who they wanted to be seen as. And I have to wonder, the 3,000 people that were at the hangar that night, like, I wonder what they thought about it and what their feelings were, both right after the show and certainly, a couple of months after, Kurt had died.
So if you were out there listening and you were at this show,
you were one of the 3,000.
I need you to message us, and we're gonna bring you on.
Yeah,
and we're gonna talk to you. I think if we can get some random fan, that could be a liability, Chris, but let's do it.
I'm ready. Well, we were 3 years in. We can take a couple of liabilities.
Yeah, and if you're at the end of this podcast and you're still listening and you were at that show, I trust you.
Oh yeah, I would give you the podcast at that point.
I mean, yeah, exactly. Like if you're at 155 at the end of an hour, or however long this has been, and you were there,
yeah, I feel like this could be
you're
one
the new
of those.
Host.
Yeah, exactly. I'll you can replace me. It could be you and Ethan. I feel like this is one of those historical events where like there were 3,050 people who were ticketed attendees that night. And it's like those jokes like, oh yeah, like I met all 30,000 people that were there that night. Like those famous sporting events. Like I've met 3 million people that were at, the AFC Championship game in 1987. Like,
when in reality, like, probably like 25% of them didn't show up, or like probably a bunch of passed away. There's probably only like 1,000 that are actually out there.
Yeah,
for whatever reason.
It's wild. Yeah, we're due for some more Nirvana and Kurt discussion on this show, and I think it makes sense to commemorate this show, and we'll probably do something in the month of April, on the 30th anniversary of his death. Mm-hmm. It's crazy, 30 years.
Yes, it is. Wow. That is crazy.
Like I'm older. I'm older now than Kurt ever was.
Yep.
Because he lived to 27 in 2 months, and I'm like 27 in 4 months or 5 months.
Mm-hmm.
So strange.
Yep. His anniversary is obviously he died right before I was born, so his 30th anniversary is also my 30th anniversary of
life.
Life.
Yeah. It's Ethan, it's like those memes. Kurt Cobain died April 94. Ethan born September 94. Welcome back, Kurt Cobain.
Holy shit, dude.
No wonder why we're doing this page. Fuck.
We need to
investigate this.
Who died in 96?
I don't know.
It's in Europe. We need to find out.
I'll have to look up famous deaths.
We need to find yours.
Yeah,
wow, that's awesome. I mean,
that's pretty cool.
Sad, but that needs to become. That's so good.
Yeah,
I wish it was Lane.
We're gonna have to figure that out.
we're gonna have to workshop this.
Well, right. I've got good news. Well, not good news. Bad news. Exactly 3 weeks before I was born, Tupac was murdered. Welcome back, Tupac.
Welcome back, Tupac. It's like there's like that picture of Tupac and Kurt Cobain together.
Yeah, it's in Tupac, the car. Kurt and Snoop, I think. And I'm like, what the fuck?
Oh, that was Mike Watt,
dude. It's always Mike Watt. He's in every picture.
I got good news.
Yeah, that was not my
Tupac and Kurt Cobain. No, that's perfect. That's awesome.
Unbelievable.
That's kind of cool.
This is how you know it's the end of a podcast episode.
It is. It's very true.
Yeah.
We derail a little bit, but
it happens.
Like we've been saying, I feel like this is the podcast.
We just make the show however we want.
Yep. We got a lot of good things coming up too. Like I said, we got some good episodes. We're banking. Drew's going to come on. We got a bunch of people that, some guests, pretty excited about. We're working on a few projects that I think you should definitely become a Patreon supporter at the top level because of some things that may happen.
Absolutely.
First access and giveaways and stuff.
Big things coming soon.
Big things coming soon. Exactly.
All right,
Chris,
let's get some songs of the week and then let's get out of here because it's Friday night and I got some stuff to do.
Oh, I got a good one too.
All right. Yeah, so do I.
My song of the week.
You want to go first?
Yes, I'll go first. That's fine. So I've been into this band and I posted them on my story. Actually, I want to make another story post and say, like, if you're one of those people out there that posts stories of music, like, just so you know, I listen to them.
Keep doing it.
I try to click on like everybody's that posts stuff.
Oh, I love it.
Check it out. Just a little bit. Like, I'll see it. I'm like, I've never heard of this, and I'll click on it. So if you're out there posting stuff to your story, keep doing it because I enjoy it. But I saw someone post about the guitarist, I believe, had passed away in the past year, and I had no idea who it was. It was actually when we were doing some research on the poster guys and some artists. One of the guys, so the band is called Killing Joke, and they are an English band in the 1979 when they were started, and they have this like it's not quite metal, and it's not like jammy, but it's very like trance and like it's like 80s rock and roll,
sure.
But like not hair metal and not too. It's like a little more heavier and it's a little bit more like trance is a good word. So it's like really like heavy guitar riffs that just like they're just holding the line. And that's how they describe the guitarist that had passed away. Like he taught everybody how to hold the line.
I like that.
He just would play. Yeah. He would just play and it would just be like, it was like before loop pedals were a thing and he would just go and then the vocals would come in and they were really like heavy and dark, but it was like a kind of a chant. Like the music is very like chant-y.
I can get into this.
Oh my gosh. It's so cool. It really is like cool. So the song is called You'll Never Get to Me by Killing Joke. And the album is really cool. And it's got like bright yellow album with like a red skull on it. And that song was really cool. You should definitely listen to Chris. I wish you were lifting or something, but if you got to drive, it's really good.
Oh yeah. So, I just pull it up. I'm adding it to my my springtime playlist.
Oh, springtime playlist. Let's go.
Yeah, man.
Definitely a spring song.
Next 3 months. That's
awesome. It is really it's really good.
Yeah. That's
cool. Kevin Walker was the guitarist and he passed away in November this past year in 23.
Gotcha.
Yep, sad day, but
good song.
I just found the music, so now because of his passing, I found his music, so
yeah, his work will last a long time.
Right. All right, Chris, you're up.
All right, my turn. This is from an album that was released in 1970, and this might be the first time that we've got a Bob Dylan song as our song of the week.
Yeah.
And some may think, I mean, Bob Dylan's catalog is just completely everywhere you turn. There's iconic pieces, from his folky stuff to some of the more rock oriented stuff to the country stuff. I mean, all over the place. I am bypassing all of them and I am going to his 1970 self-portrait album and I am going to the song Wigwam. Wigwam has been my favorite song for the last week. I actually included it. I had it as the soundtrack to one of my reels that I posted on my lifting Instagram page.
Yes.
I've just been fucking obsessed with Wigwam, the lack of discernible lyrics, the horns. It's just kind of, you're just like wafting through on like a trip, but like a very pleasant and like chill trip.
This is kind of an OG song of the week. I remember you showing this to me like like 10 years ago.
You know who showed me Wigwam?
Ryan?
Andrew Wells.
Andrew Wells? Close.
Andrew
Really?
Wells. Andrew Wells showed me Wigwam. Yeah.
I knew it was Myron.
Because
I knew Myron showed it to you.
Back in the day in Myron, we used to hammer I Shall Be Free from Freewheelin' Bob Dylan. And then Andrew's rebuttal was Wigwam. I don't know how he knew it, but it lit my world on fire. And here we are 10 years later. I'm wigging my wom all the way home.
You're wigging your wom. Oh my gosh, I shall be free.
Yeah.
Your wigwam I shall be free.
Who up wigging their wom right now?
Wow.
Yeah.
Yep. This is the end of a podcast for sure.
Yeah, this is totally the end of the podcast.
That's great.
So check out those two. I'm gonna go on a limb here and say that both of those two songs are massively different from one another. One dog looks one way, one looks the other way. You know.
You say one dog looks one way.
Yeah,
that's awesome. I never heard that. One dog looks one way, one looks the other.
I think that's from Goodfellas, like the painting scene. I might be butchering.
Oh hell yeah!
I don't know. Yeah,
that's good.
It's hard.
All right, guys. Thank you again so much for making it to the end of another podcast. We'll be back next week for a very important 3-year anniversary podcast. Alert! We're gonna be sentimental, and it'll be who knows. You know, it's gonna be your classic. Yes, there it is. If you are still listening, if you're watching on YouTube, Chris is showing this absolute beautiful painting that I knew about and I didn't even think about. That's fucking
dog.
Holy shit, that photo. Wow. Okay. That's great. That's going to be posted. That's a mood board. That's literally a post.
Like this one. One dog goes one way, one dog goes the other way. And sometimes that's how it happens. So
simple, you know, such a simple. Two dogs, different ways, and it means so much. You can say one dog goes one way, one dog goes the other.
Everything was very simple.
You can go as deep as you want with that picture and that story.
Absolutely. And that's it. For episode 155 of the Grunge Bible podcast, we bid you a pleasant adieu. I hope you join us back here next week for the 3-year anniversary spectacular shindig bonanza jubilee that we will be having here.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be great.
It's going to be great. I'm going to go this way. Chris is going to go that way. Rock and roll, guys.
Rock and roll. Stay heavy, everybody.
Cheers.